I'm sitting here currently at Harvard's Annenberg Dining Hall with a plate full of food, and it feels pretty normal, almost boring. But this plate represents one of the hardest prediction problems scientists are working on today, predicting future agricultural yields under climate change. You might have heard of Malthusian theory, the idea that population grows faster than food supply. But once you add climate change to the mix, the question becomes much more complex. Can we predict how yields of crops like maize, wheat, rice, and soybeans will change over the next 50 to 100 years? And how confident can we be in those predictions? To answer that, scientists use large-scale prediction systems built by international collaborations like AgMIP and ECMIP that estimate crop yields, usually measured as output per unit land, like tons per hectare, under different combinations of temperature, precipitation, CO2 concentration, soil conditions, and management practices. Process-based crop models simulate plant growth directly, including photosynthesis, phenology, water stress, and heat stress, while statistical models like Bayesian model averaging use historical relationships between climate variables and observed yields. Increasingly, studies combine both approaches along with controlled experiments on CO2 fertilization and drought response. Historically, predictions in this field have evolved significantly. An early global study by Rosenzweig and Perry relied on simple models and limited data, leading to the suggestion that the future held only a small overall decline in agricultural production with greater vulnerability in developing regions. By the 2010s, researchers shifted to systematic model intercomparison. A meta-analysis by Challenor et al. Found that stable crops would decline at around 2 degrees Celsius of local warming without adaptation, though strategies like changing planting dates or crop varieties could offset some losses. Additionally, a wheat intercomparison revealed that differences between crop models themselves were a major source of uncertainty, sometimes larger than differences between climate models. More recent research is both more detailed and more pessimistic. Jagermeyer et al. Used next-generation AgMIP and ECMIP ensembles to show that negative impacts on crop productivity may emerge before 2040 under high emissions. And Holtergren et al. Found that even after farmer responses, global food availability declines by about 120 calories per person per day per degree of warming. However, uncertainty does not come from just one source. Climate uncertainty plays a role since future emissions and warming trajectories are unknown, but a 2024 perspective in Nature Food argues that crop model processes can account for more than half of total uncertainty in agricultural projections. In addition, input data such as soil properties and management practices introduce significant variability, and some studies suggest that soil data uncertainty alone can rival or exceed the impact of climate differences in global yield simulations. There is also major uncertainty related to adaptation. Predicting how farmers will respond to climate change, whether by adopting new crop varieties, investing in irrigation, or changing land use, is inherently difficult because it depends on economic, technological, and institutional factors. A particularly important example of these challenges is the Sahel region in Africa, which is highly sensitive to small changes in temperature and rainfall, meaning that even slight shifts in climate conditions can lead to large changes in crop yields. Climate models disagree significantly about future precipitation patterns in this region, with some projecting increased rainfall and others predicting more frequent droughts, making the Sahel a critical test case for evaluating both the risks and limits of agricultural prediction systems. When it comes to communicating these predictions, organizations like the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change use standardized frameworks that combine evidence and agreement into terms like high confidence and calibrated probabilities such as likely or unlikely. However, a 2025 study showed that labeling outcomes as unlikely led to lower publicly perceived scientific consensus than equivalent phrases like a small chance, despite identical probabilities. As a result, when these findings are translated into public-facing summaries or news coverage, uncertainty is often compressed into simple statements about yield declines or food security risks, which can distort how confident the science actually is. So how accurate are these predictions, and how do scientists actually check them? Well, they often use several validation strategies, including hindcasting, where crop models are run with historical climate data to see if they reproduce observed yields. They also use out-of-sample testing and cross-validation to test how well models generalize across regions and conditions, and ultimately evaluate ensemble performances, since combining multiple models often improves reliability over any single model. Going back to this plate of food, the key question is not just whether a climate agricultural prediction is accurate, but how it was made, under what assumptions, and how uncertain it is. Because in this field, understanding uncertainty is just as important as understanding the prediction itself.